round real. And everybody will just have to approve that. But thank you so much. So over to you, Terri, Kevin, and Carmela.
My mute button totally disappeared. So every time I share my screen, I think that happens. Welcome everybody. Hopefully you can see my screen. It should say computer networking and infrastructure. Great, thank you so much. My name is Terri Johnson. I'm here with Carmi, Kevin, and Zoe today to talk a little bit about networking, and we'll give our introductions on the next page. So we'll start with Carmi, go to Kevin, and then I'll introduce myself and Zoe.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Carmi. I am coming from George Washington University. I graduated last year, summer 2023, with my Master of Engineering in Cybersecurity Policy. I have been an Insight faculty teaching fellow since spring 2021. And last semester was the first time I TA'd virtually with Sinclair Community College in Ohio with Insight. I decided to join CAE simply because, you know, this is the place where you need to take the next level, next step up as you're, you know, climbing towards being new teaching and faculty. The reason why I decided to do teaching is because, to be honest, there was no female teaching assistant in my program. I never had a female professor in my program either. And I think it's like really important since I was already acquiring a master's degree to kind of be the example that you want to be for the community that you know you want to see band together. And so I decided to take this on. But I'm very happy to be here with you all, and I'm excited to get to know you all on network afterwards. Thanks.
All right. I am Kevin Lann-Teubner. I'm from Butler Community College in South Central Kansas, just right outside of Wichita. I've taught for 10 plus years in networking and cyber. Taught just about everything from A+ to Network Plus to virtual computing and cloud computing now as well. So kind of a wide background in different technologies. So that's kind of where I come from and thinking about this.
Awesome. My name is Terri Johnson, and I am an instructor of cybersecurity management at UCCS, which is the University of Colorado in Colorado Springs. I have been teaching since 1999, which I just realized makes this like year 25. So I'm feeling my age right now. Thank you very much with all of the new and early career faculty. I spent most of my time teaching at Pikes Peak Community, but now State College here in Colorado Springs, and developed a networking and cybersecurity program over there before moving over to UCCS. My favorite class to teach is just the very basic introduction to networking. Like, I'm super into the OSI model and you know, routing and switching and all of those kinds of things. But my second favorite class is probably ethical hacking. So kind of two ends of that spectrum. Like Paige mentioned earlier, I struggle with the teaching risk type of classes.
And I'm Zoe Fowler. I'm a little bit of an outlier. I'm principal researcher at the CAE's Careers Preparation National Centre, and my focus is on competency. And I'm just joining in this amazing group today to just talk for a couple of minutes really about the CAE approach to competency, and how when we think about teaching, we're also thinking about how to build the employability of our students. But really happy to be here.
Awesome. We're glad you're here too. All right, so today's agenda, we're just going to kind of look at an overview of why networking. And I've got to say that a lot of you have a lot of great experience already on this call. And so feel free to pitch in and chime in with any thoughts, any tips, tricks that you've also learned in the classroom, because we can all learn something from everybody. And we'll talk about communication tools. We'll talk about tools and curriculum, application outside the classroom. We'll touch on competency, power skills, which is what we're calling soft skills, right? Because they really are our powerful skills in the workplace. And then we will do a wrap up and share out. I have to look around my microphone. I'm going to move that so I stop doing this. So just a quick overview. We are approaching cybersecurity kind of from the computer networking and infrastructure lens. So a lot of times cybersecurity is looked at kind of from that computer science and programming area. But the thing is that if you have a computer network, which is connecting all of your devices across the organization, you have to understand how to defend that network. And so we're just going to give you some of the ways that we use tools in the classroom. Maybe you'll see something new. Again, feel free to contribute if you would like to do so. So first, I'll bring it over to Carmi. And Carmi, are you okay if I just flip slides for you real quick?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So right now I want to mention a few important communication tools. As you all know, especially at least from my perspective, being in graduate school, being able to enter the workforce, it's very common for us to see platforms like Microsoft Teams and Slack. However, there is a platform called a communications tool platform called Discord. And Discord was originally created for the gaming community. However, it's taken on a new role where you can join communities and, have channels within those communities. Oh gosh, I was going to say historically. Historically, it looks kind of like IRC. That was my sister's generation, my older sister's generation. And so within these channels, you're going to be able to see, in this particular instance, the National Cyber League, which does, covers 7 domains in cybersecurity for their Capture the Flag. You're going to see students being able to participate with each other, referencing here a problem that occurred during the competition that they're going over. Mind you, these students are from all around the US. There were about like 500 teams that participate annually in the competition. And so this is just an example of how students can kind of collaborate and discuss with each other. And even our faculty are also in this Discord, because again, this is like a community for the National Cyber League. Next slide, please. Okay, and so this is actually taken from my personal server. So I forgot to also mention in the introduction, I am the co-founder of Women in Cybersecurity at the George Washington University. We co-founded the club spring 2022. That was the same time period that I joined the National Cybersecurity Training and Education Center. And so this is taken from our fall 2023 National Cyber League competition. This is another type of communication tool that you can use within the channels, where you could actually have students collaborate with each other. And so, mind you, we're working hybrid on this competition. So sometimes we're at school, sometimes we aren't in school. As you can tell here, I kind of said, okay, well, this is what I can contribute to the competition. I'm good at OSINT, I'm good at cryptography, and I'm good at password cracking. So having interactive features like these, there's a lot of ability to kind of customize the space. And we actually have an affiliated, like, we have an affiliated university, like a hub within Discord. So only students with the EDU email address from that university can create their own Discord server. So that's actually pretty good too in terms of like community security. However, because I'm admin of my campus server, I'm allowed to add people such as yourselves from the outside with a link to the server, but it has to be only through my security controls. Yes. Okay.
All right, awesome. Kevin, I'm going to let you share. I'm going to stop sharing so that you can share here, since you'll be walking through some of the next tools.
Actually, if I could have you share back,
Yep.
and I'll run through those slides real quick, and then I'll show some of those tools. I'll just have you click through the slides for me again,
Perfect.
like we did there. So we can go ahead and go on to the next one. The first one I'm going to kind of talk about is virtual machines and VMware. It's a product I use in just about every single one of my cloud classes, or just every class that I teach, actually. And I focus on VMware because that's what we have and what we use and have some curriculum for. But I just kind of wanted to start with just kind of explaining what virtual machines are. I know probably a lot of people use them and know them, but I just kind of wanted to start on a level field here. So when we're talking about virtual machines, they're software that is going to emulate a physical computer. So you're basically running a computer on a computer with that, and you can isolate your environment for different operating systems and applications so they can kind of run in a sandbox with that, and it offers a lot of flexibility, security, and efficiency. Next slide. Great. Some of the benefits, you can run software not supported by your school's devices or that your school doesn't want installed on their devices. With a lot of our courses, we maybe use some questionable software or stuff like that, and they don't want that on their general machines. So it's a way that we can manage that. We can run things to where it's not going to affect their school systems. That way they can still get hands-on learning with different operating systems. You can run things like Wireshark and Kali, and do those things and not make your IT people mad at you. Yeah, go ahead. That's good. Like I said, you can create an isolated environment for them for experimentation, testing software code, and have, test out ideas without, again, like I said, making your IT people mad, and that encouraging risk taking and problem solving, all go into using virtual machines in your classroom. Go ahead, next one. Let's see. They're going to reduce your need for physical computers. So you don't have to have multiple machines for multiple operating systems or multiple uses. You can build them all if you have a big enough and powerful enough machine that you're loading them on. You can just be limited by that. So you can have lower cost with hardware acquisitions and maintenance, which that aspect will probably make your IT people happy. Some of the common ones, like I said, VMware, that's the one I use. It's fairly common in business. That's the one I've seen used more in industry. That's kind of why I focus on that one. I tend to try to use what is in our area and what I see businesses using. I know there's products like Hyper-V with Microsoft, which is common as well, and VirtualBox. But I see most industries using VMware if they're going to be using virtual machines and virtual platforms. So that's kind of where I focus, just so that they see what they're going to see out in industry. And for our department to do that and to do it in a cost-effective way, we're a part of the VMware Academy. I'm not affiliated with them or anything, so this is just me talking about it because I like using it and plugging them. They don't pay me to promote. So with that, you get access to their virtual technology. You get discounted certification costs if you want your students, or if your students are interested in getting certified with VMware, and you also get access to their curriculum, which on a side note, not just with VMware Academy, if there's any software you use in your classrooms Any products you use, a lot of the big name ones all have some form of academy or some form of relationships with schools that you can sign up for to get access at low cost to their products or for free a lot of times. And it's a good avenue to look. So if you're wanting to use something like Splunk in your classroom, just look them up, look to see what kind of educational stuff they have. And most times they'll have some kind of access for you to use at low cost or no cost in your classroom. And sometimes partnering with your IT departments as well, if they have a representative that they buy from, those people can get you access to software and stuff too. But for VMware Academy, there is a cost with it, but it is really pretty low cost when you're looking at what you get from them and what you can use in your classroom. Basically for 1 to 200 seats of that, it's about $330 per year. And it goes up from there, kind of listed in the chart. Let's see, so if you can go ahead and go to the next slide. What you get with that is fully licensed software for Workstation Pro, vSphere, so if you're doing server installations of ESXi and building out an infrastructure that way, you can do that as well too. It's all fully licensed for your classroom and for your students to use. So it just, for every student that you apply one of those licenses to, they can get access to the software to download and have trial products for a year to use on their home machines. But then you can also use that to do lab installs as well too. And then access to curriculum and for their different technologies. They have some just baseline stuff, but then they also have that map to their certain certifications for technical associate and certified professional. Go ahead and go on to the next one. I'll talk about GNS3 a little bit, and then I'll demo both of those. So the other product that I use, not as extensively as VMware, but I have used GNS3 in the past in some of my classes, and it will give you a space to emulate networks. So I'll these skip to the next slide as well. And with that, you can add various operating systems to this. You can add computers, you can add switches, routers, and it basically will provide a realistic simulation of what your network would look like. So if you build out a network map with all the routers that you want, with all the switches that you want and computers, you can basically turn it on and it will run and show you how it's going to run if you are setting up in the physical world. Go ahead and go to the next one. Again, it's cost effective, safe to experiment because you're doing it in a closed system. It will piggyback off of either VMware or VirtualBox if you are adding virtual machines to it and virtual appliances. It is free and open source to run the software. The only downfall to GNS3 is if you are wanting to run like Cisco switches, Cisco routers, you do have to have access to their operating system. They don't give that out for free. But you might be able to partner with your institution if they have them, or again, reach out to representatives. They may be able to get you ISOs that they can license for you. Or if you run Cisco labs and have Cisco equipment, you can load those ISOs into this as well. They do have some, there are some open source products you can use that you can add into it. GNS3, you can import virtual machines in there. You can also import Docker containers. So if you are someone who likes Docker and likes to build Docker containers, you can add those in there to simulate your environment as well. So I think that's the end of my slide. So I'll show a couple of videos that I made of just kind of running through some basic processes that I do in my classes. Let's see. All right. So you should be seeing, get rid of that. Sorry, the toolbar came down and it's in my way. This first one is just me building a basic virtual machine. I did this just yesterday in my A+ class. I use this very early on so that they can start to see the process, because we do this a lot in a lot of my classes, so that we can build out a machine. We can do what we want with it. If we want to keep it for the next time, we can, or we can just build it for what we want to do and then delete it at the end of the day. I think I'm searching for my ISO because I didn't do a very good job of naming him, so I can't find it. There we go, found it there. Basically, I'm installing Windows 10, walking through the wizard that it has you build, picking out a name and a location for it to store all the files for it, picking a hard drive size there. And then that's showing you basically what it's all emulating, all the software that's attached to it now, the hardware. And so I'm adding a little bit more memory to it so it speeds up the install process. Basically clicking finish builds the machine. And then we'll turn it on and start the install process. So I'm going to skip through some of this because this just the loading process for Windows, and we've probably all seen that before. Don't need to watch it again. But just with this showing some of the flexibility that you have after you've installed a machine, and what you can change with it. You can change some things on the fly, not having to restart your machines. Others, you can shut them down. You can add more CPU cores, add more memory to it, and then turn it back on to give it more horsepower if you want to. So basically what I'm doing is adding another network adapter. So you can add it to another network if you need to. So if you want to split that, you can. Showing the different options, but just showing how quick and easy it is to modify things and to change things for your students to try out different environments. They're just kind of verifying that we have the two network cards in there now. And then when you're done, with your machine. If you don't want it anymore, you can quickly just delete it and it's gone, freeing up space again on your computer to do whatever else you need to. So that's kind of just a basic thing. Like I said, I do this frequently in my classes so that they can get comfortable doing this, comfortable building machines for what they want to and how to configure them and change them. The other one here, a bit shorter, is just a quick demo with GNS3 showing putting a switch, an open source router out there in the environment and a couple of simulated computers and setting them to get a DHCP IP address and then pinging back and forth between them. I'll make this full screen again here. So that's just kind of showing your different devices on the side. Some of these I've added in, some come default. There's just a few in there. That was a router. That was an add-on. You can get it off of their website. It's an appliance that you can add to it. The switch there was one of the built-in ones, has some limited functionality, but you can show basic switch functions with it. And then the PCs are also emulated, so they're basic functionality with this, but you can show some stuff. But then you can also, like I said, you can add virtual computers into this as well to get full-featured machines too. There is basically just adding the wires that you would connect a computer to your switch and your router. The little red spots show that they are turned off right now. When they are green means that they are turned on. You connect to this and manage everything through the console. I'll show that after that one turns on. So you can have kind of a mixed environment, like this one is showing the switch there is actually an appliance that is a full-featured appliance mixed with some of those emulated environments as well. This is connecting to the console and showing it going through its load process. And then connecting to the console for those two machines as well. And since these are emulated, the command is fairly easy. So if you have new people coming in here, there's typing in DHC IP DHCP, turns on the DHCP for that emulated computer and has it grab an IP address. So the step up for that is pretty easy for people who are new to this, who haven't done anything like this before. And then showing just some basic ping back and forth between the two computers and to the gateway on the router. So a pretty simple setup. You can see over here on the side, there's a GNS3 VM. That is actually a VM that's running in Workstation. So your GNS3 will connect to either Workstation or VirtualBox, whichever one you are using. And that's where a lot of these VMs will get loaded, and appliances will get loaded onto there through this process to run in this environment. In here, also, I have this GNS3 Nmap over here on the side. That was a Docker image I was trying to play with to get set up and run in here. So you can run Docker containers on that GNS3 VM as well too, and import them into here as well. And if you do have Cisco ISOs to use, you can use all the features that are built into that, so you can get as complex as you want with more advanced routing and simulations. It's really just at the at what your imagination can come up with for what you can set up in here.
This is
So
awesome. We've got a few
um,
questions.
oh, okay, great. I'll see if I can answer them.
Awesome. And I thought we could open this up to everybody too. Paige asked if we or anybody else has any tips on introducing virtual machines to newer tech students. And I think that would be a great thing to, yeah, just talk about with everybody.
Yeah. I do it early. I do it guided. So I'll be at the front of the class and have them follow me step by step through everything the first couple times, setting them up. And then I just kind of will give them free rein to build and see what they can do to get them used to it and comfortable. Letting them know that with virtual machines, you know, you can mess them up and break them, and you can delete them and bring them back up real quick. Also starting to show that you can take snapshots and stuff like that, so you can easily revert back. So some more advanced things as well.
Awesome. And then Jason and a couple others, including myself, actually, we have students who struggle with having enough resources, RAM, hard drive space, etc., to run VMs, and then also Mac users running into issues. What advice do you have, or anybody else?
Yeah, for us, yeah, that we run into that difficulty too. So like we give them the software to be able to install on their computers locally. But yeah, some people just don't have the money for a machine that can run those kind of things. We have our computer labs that we have all have machines that, and then we have open lab hours for them to come use those if they want to. So there's a downfall with that. There's kind of a and there's just not a whole lot you can do besides making your labs available to those students. Any other thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I've not personally run into the situation where I've had to troubleshoot the issue with students, but for myself, I have an M2 Mac Pro, and none of the virtualization softwares work very well. And I just so happen to have an old desktop. I'm actually looking at it right now, and I turned it into an ESXi server. So I was thinking maybe if I set up port forwarding, I could have my students access it, and then they have a remote access to virtualization software. Maybe it's, you know, a little bit too much from the get-go, but I think it kind of solves that issue where, you know, if you don't have, you know, if you have a MacBook or if you don't have enough RAM, it might help.
Yeah, that's definitely a good idea. I know VMware has like VMware Fusion, but it's not really quite the same as running Workstation and those kind of things with that. But yeah, if you have your own server that you can stand up and do that with, that helps a lot. Let's see. Any other questions about either of those?
I'm wondering if if anybody, we have used a couple times in Azure environment to try and spin up some machines, but we have a lot of latency issues with that. But so we've tried to use that as kind of a way of being more accessible to our students. Has anybody else tried that more successfully maybe than I have?
Yes, we also use those. I use them for all of my classes. I have them available for all of my classes, but I don't use them for all of them. I mainly use it for my AZ 800 certification course, which is, domain controllers, Windows Server, that type of stuff. And we do also face latency issues. I just think that once the machine is up and running for the first time, it doesn't take that long afterwards. But I'm interested to hear everyone else's thoughts on that, on how to use it most efficiently.
Yeah, we've kind of had a similar issue with latency. And I think that it's hard to come over. But I know some of our classes, not our department, we've used a product called a Porto, which is a similar thing. It's accessing a cloud machine to build whatever environment or run whatever software you want to. But we've had still the same issue with latency on there, especially if there's any kind of graphic intensive stuff to go with it. One thing I didn't show, I guess, with the VMware Academy as well, with some of that curriculum, like if you are teaching a VMware course, there's also guided labs that can go with that as well too, to where you are accessing their virtual labs. There's a small cost to the student to get access to it, or your school could pick up the tab too, depending on how you wanted to manage that, but you get guided labs on their pre-configured environments as well too, to supplement what you're doing in your class.
Awesome. And Jason, I don't know if you want to speak to this at all, but you talked about using AWS for virtual machines. Maybe that's a better solution.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a better solution. We have done that with some of our virtual environments, specifically when we were setting up our Linux and crossing over with the SQL servers, setting up SQL servers and doing that. What we have to be careful with is our students get free accounts, but there's only so much money on them. So if they leave their instances running, they can then run out of money quickly. And so it is tied to that. And so we just have to be careful with that if you do take that approach. And the learning curve is steep because the AWS does not make it easy to go in and try to do all the configuration. You really have to walk your students through step by step to show them how to do it.
Are you an AWS Academy or whatever they call it?
I think we are tied to them. Aloka, you might know more.
Yes, we are.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Aloka's more experienced with it than I am.
I know with that AWS Academy, we're an AWS Academy too, and I use their curriculum for a lot of our classes. I believe they have do you use their labs through the Academy? Because I believe there's some free access to labs there as well, where you don't necessarily have to have a student account. It's built in through the Academy to access and build your environments. I haven't used it as much because I use the courses, but I think there's also an open lab that you can attach students to.
Yes, that's the Learner's Lab.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Does that still cap you with the amount of money you have, or is that?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
for my college, I know it's about $100 per student. But for some of the classes I've taught, like even students who are prone to leaving their instances running still, just this is not like a blanket case, but like I have had students not exceed that budget though. So it's a fair budget, yeah.
Yeah, because I've done that before. I set up a computer and storage and stuff on Azure, and then let it run for 6 months, and got an email that said you're done. So because I just forgot about it, and that happens.
Good. And then there's a couple of Well, actually, I do have a question. I had a student come in the other night who runs everything only on Linux. He refuses to use anything like VirtualBox or anything that would run on a Windows machine. So he mentioned a type of hypervisor that he was using with Linux, and I am not familiar with it. But what kind of advice would you have for, so I had actually somebody mentioned this lab, I think Anne mentioned this lab earlier in the chat. It's a Cisco lab where you install a virtual machine and then you install a specific machine for the Cisco labs, right? And so what advice do you have for me? Because he also refuses to touch the Azure environment to help him out.
It could be, my first thought is that's a great learning experience for him as to how that might be difficult when he gets a job later on, when they're wanting him to build Azure environments or they're wanting him to work in a mixed environment that has Windows. To say that if you're gonna do this, you're gonna have to figure out how to make this work, because it's outside of normal a lot of times, or outside of white papers that you may have to run into. So if you're going to do it this way, you're going to have to figure out how to make it work. If you're going to do things outside of the scope and the process that's in place, that might be too harsh. So I don't know if anyone else has other ideas with that.
Yeah, I think Anne was talking about that too, Mac users disliking Windows. But
yeah, same type of thing. If you're a Mac user and you're going to have to figure out how to make that work in your environments, just because the business world right now still is predominantly Windows. Although I went to Microsoft Ignite a couple of years ago, and all the presenters were presenting on Macs, even though they were a Microsoft conference. I just thought that was funny.
Anne, were you gonna say
Yeah, if you don't mind me jumping in.
jump right in?
Oh, okay, so yeah, so when I teach digital forensics, I actually pull the latest statistics as to, what machines that hackers are using or what, what's getting traced. And it's like 98% are Windows or, not Macs. And so the students that I run into that have these gorgeous Macs, it's like they don't know Windows at all. And I said, well, how are you going to defend a corporate network when they're all Windows machines? How is that going to work for you? And so I tell everybody, and I love to teach actually the the freshmen, incoming freshmen. They like me to teach that class because, man, I set them straight because I worked for 25 years in industry before I went into academia. So I just tell them, okay, check your Macs at the door. They're like, what? That's where it begins. And so, yeah, they definitely need to realize that, the Macs are beautiful, but that is not what the hackers are using.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Cool. And then there's a question for you, Kevin, from Saeed. Are you familiar with EVE-NG?
No, I'm not off the top of my head.
Okay, yeah.
Could you maybe explain what that is?
Yeah, Saeed, if you could come off mute.
Yeah, hi. Sorry everyone, I joined a little late, so I didn't hear the questions. So the question is about EVNG.
Yes. Yeah, you had a note in it in the chat, and so we were just wondering if you'd explain that a little more.
So I actually worked with GNS3 a long time back because I was taking the Cisco lab exam. I'm also a Cisco certified internet expert in routing and switching. So I came up, so EVNG came up later with a lot more robust and scalable, a lot more integration of other virtual machines, which GNS3 is like an application that you could install, but the EVNG, you have a web platform for installing all the VMs and other stuff. So I'm exploring that option to set up a security lab for the university, so where the students could use the lab. So you could spin up the VMs, whatever the VMs you want. Or also, so one of the thing is that in this GNS3 probably and EVNG is that you can get industry like the vendor security devices, like the Cisco IPS or probably Checkpoint, UTM, and other stuff. So those things could be loaded into these systems. Though we have all those services that you could develop using Linux, but when we go to industry, we hardly find just Linux-based IPS. It's mostly Checkpoint or Palo Alto or those kind of devices. So I'm just wondering if anyone has any planning to build on EVNG so that we could maybe talk and probably help each other in building one lab.
Yeah, that's new to me. I'm interested in that, so I'm gonna go check it out.
Yeah, new
and
to me
see.
too.
But yeah,
Just
the whole thing of getting industry ISOs and stuff like that is like you said, Palo Alto and those kind of things are a great learning tool. And then again, look up for like Palo Alto. I'm sure they have some kind of education academy that your institution
do.
can sign up for, and you can get ISOs and stuff from them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they definitely have an academy because I took some training years ago now, I think, but they were trying to get us to start a Palo Alto Academy or whatever their name was for it. But yeah. All right, cool. So any other thoughts or questions? I'm going to actually move on to Packet Tracer, which a lot of you have already talked about using. So just if you could do a quick show of hands or even put it in the chat, how many of you are familiar with Packet Tracer? Okay. Yep. Nice. Good. All right. So this is awesome. So most of you, or a lot of you actually have experience with Packet Tracer. I'm a huge Packet Tracer fan personally. I think that it does a lot of real good simulations. It is not perfect, and I will talk about that in a minute. Cool, thank you for your input. So you can put your hands down, and then if you want to ask questions, feel free to pop in or comment, right? We can all make this better. So we use the Cisco Networking Academy. If you're familiar with Packet Tracer, you probably are also familiar with the Cisco Networking Academy. It's started back in '98, which is when I started teaching, essentially. And I did start teaching network way back when, and have been through all of Cisco's iterations of it's 4 classes, it's 3 classes. We're incorporating wireless. We're not incorporating wireless. And it's been kind of a long, strange journey with Cisco, but I am a big fan, I will admit straight up. The reason I love Cisco is because they actually have such an international reach, right? They are in many languages. I have students who actually read the curriculum in their native language because I have some students who speak Arabic and some who speak Spanish, and so that the fact that they can access that curriculum in their native language is pretty cool. It also really focuses on getting that job, and Cisco too is very career and tech oriented. And so if you're teaching it, what I've noticed in transitioning from the community college to the university is that, oh yes, skills for all, you're right, Aloka, yep. Is that the focus is in our community colleges in the cyber and networking worlds is on hands-on practical application. And when I moved to the university, they specifically told me that that was training and that I needed to have a little bit more of an academic background rather than being so specifically focused on the career aspect of it, which has been kind of interesting to wrap my head around. But we also have these partnerships and accessibility things that come up with Cisco Networking Academy. And again, I'm still just a big fan. So here's a list of the benefits. I'm not going to read them to you, but you can kind of look through these. And of course, there's a ton of information out there. So Packet Tracer itself is a simulation and visualization tool. So again, developed by Cisco, you can create network topologies, and we'll go through a demo. I'm not quite as cool as Kevin. I did not pre-record it to make sure that there would be no hiccups. So I anticipate hiccups. And I think, Paige, you sent out a link for everybody to download it if they want it. So if you want to go ahead and open that, we can all kind of work together on doing some of these things as well, especially if you're not familiar with it. What's also kind of neat about Packet Tracer is not only can you create a network topology and kind of simulate some of those network configurations, but you can do a very simple form of Wireshark almost, and watch the data packets move through a network as you're building your network. So some of the benefits, it's interactive. We've got drag and drop. It's pretty easy to see. The one, I mean, this says it's a benefit, it supports Cisco devices and protocols, but that's also a drawback, in my opinion, in that it only supports Cisco devices and protocols. And again, it's not, unlike GNS3, where you can run the full featured operating system, you just get bits and pieces. Like the features of like the main operating system are there. You can do most everything, but if you're trying to do something a little bit more advanced, the other night we were doing an SNMP lab in class, and it's a HyFlex class. So half of my students are in class, and thanks, Saeed. Half of my students are online, and so I have them use Packet Tracer to kind of simulate what we're doing in class. And that has been kind of challenging when it comes to some of those more advanced concepts. But now I'm thinking GNS3 is where I'm going to be going to. So let's take a look at Packet Tracer. And what I have here is just a little screenshot of how complicated you can make a Packet Tracer activity. So we can have kind of our routers that maybe simulate the cloud environment in the or a wide area networking environment. We can have our different aspects of maybe a small branch office in pink, maybe the home office in orange, and kind of some of the public networking space in green. And then Cisco comes up with these step-by-step labs, and I will show you those in a moment. I just opened what the Networking Academy looks like, so you can see the courses that you're teaching. If you click into one of those courses, so for example, Introduction to Networks, you can just get a feel for what the curriculum looks like. I like all of the big diagrams. There's a lot of good diagrams in here. And if you want to look specifically maybe for videos or particular labs, you can also do that exact kind of search, and it will bring it up for you. So if you want to learn how to configure a switch, for example, you can do it there. All right, so that is the Academy. Oh, that was my family during COVID. Let me find my Packet Tracer. So kind of two different ways that we can look at Packet Tracer. And this is one of the pre-canned labs that comes with the Cisco Networking Academy. And this one is that configure initial switch settings. So what you see is you get the directions, and then you also have the network topology over here. And so one of the things that is always a big deal in my classroom, if they've taken it online and they're used to clicking on a switch, for instance, and immediately getting into the CLI, then they come into my classroom and I say, here's a rack with a switch. Here's your laptop that you can use. Go. What do you think happens? Panic. Yes. Yeah. They don't remember how to actually get the switch to show its configuration, right? They forget that they need to use a console cable and a terminal emulator. I like that a lot. You tease them and ask them to double tap the physical. I am totally going to use that. Be like, yeah, just double tap. So exactly. So so that's kind of the advantage of having that real equipment experience if you can. But I do love the simulation. So I can go into the switch here and do my configuration. If I want to name it host names, we'll call it Smith switch. All right, and we can go in and do our configuration there. So what's neat about these kind of pre-canned labs is you see on the very bottom right, it has a completion when it will count up. And students can also check their results and see what they've missed. Of course, this leads to students who only live by this assessment right here. And in real life, are they going to get a nice little checkbox of what they missed? No, they are not. So that's when we can bring in our from scratch packet tracer. And so we've got all of these different components that we can use down here. So I can put in a switch, a router. And I can use we can say I can connect it to a PC. I can even just find a cable that will connect the two. And then using the emulation environment, this is what the PC looks like. So it's definitely not a typical Windows or Mac or Linux environment. James, exactly. Yes. I don't even know how many times, the first time we do lab, because our switches only turn on when they are physically plugged in. There is no off on switch, right? Like there is on the routers. And so I've come to the lab equipment in front of them, and they're like, it's not doing anything. I can't get in. And so I walk to the back and I hold up the power cable. Yes. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it that you guys have had that same experience. So we can use our layer 1. That's right. Yes. They get tired of me saying that to them. And, I'm always like, oh, that's what's the most challenging to kind of teach in the virtual environment, right? Is check layer 1. And in fact, super quick little story, but we were doing a lab where I had 2 groups in the same rack of equipment because we had 6 switches and 6 routers in this one rack. And one student plugged his console cable into the other group's router and was configuring it. So all of that, keeping that in mind. So we can use the command prompt just as we would with our Windows machine. We can set IP configurations in the PC and so on and so forth. So that is kind of my short and quick demonstration of packet tracer. What other thoughts? Feel free to, I'm going to stop sharing for a minute so that I can see all of your faces again. Any tips or tricks or thoughts or comments on that? All right. Then let's move ahead, and Carmi, I think you are going to be up here. Do you want me to share the screen?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay, so I will be, oh, I'll be discussing again the concept of community pathways. This is something that I like to promote because for me, my community pathway that led me here to where I am with you all is really just my experience in the classroom, but also outside the classroom as well. So when we think of capture the flag competitions, not limited to network security, but the other domains that are covered in these competitions, the long range goal or the long game is really about, promoting diversity and education in the workforce. When I first entered cybersecurity, a lot of my grad school friends, the first year grad students that are very passionate, the word that came out of their mouth was like hack the box. And upon entering grad school and co-founding Women in Cybersecurity at George Washington University, I realized there's so many other CTFs to provide students with more experiences and more support in a different way than the conventional way of applying oneself outside of the classroom, not limited to hack the box. And so there are 3 here. There's the National Cyber League, there's Vivid 2024, and recently, I just presented yesterday a CTF general body meeting at my campus, NCAE's upcoming CTF. And I had a lot of interest from the undergrad students in particular about this because of how beginner friendly it is. Next slide, please. Yes, so this is the Instagram page of WeSysGW. And as you can see in the National Cyber League, we treat it like it's a celebration. We even graphic designed our logos, our 2 teams. The first is GW Suspects, and the second is the Foggy Bottom Rats. And, just having this alone, having the students graphic design, their teams, choose their teammates, prepare for it. It becomes almost like our version of the Super Bowl, right? And so what's great about the National Cyber League is that it's very beginner friendly. I always emphasize, you could be any major in any year to join National Cyber League. In fact, I insist that our computer science majors at our university go outside of just their department. In my team alone, we had a student that was a double major, international affairs comm sci. We had myself, I was in engineering management. We had grad students, cybersecurity in computer science. We had doctoral student, it's mix and match. And they do have from easy to hard. So you can have a variety or a slew of questions. And so a variety of problems to solve together as a team. So the different domains also help students figure out what their best possible interest is. As I mentioned earlier, my areas of interest in the competition are typically OSINT, cryptography, and password cracking. But as of late, I've developed an interest in forensics and, now network traffic analysis. There's a resume boost when it comes to the National Cyber League. When you participate in this game, it's really just, you need as much time as possible to provide your students any kind of technical exposure. And that's the way that I feel that it's great for students to learn best. Just because you can tell them at any time of the day, I don't care if it's, 1 a.m. at night, if you feel like you want to look up a problem to talk about with your friends later, not related to homework, right? Not related to homework, you have this competition to talk about. And so the NCL also provides certificates for the LinkedIn for students, and that's a real confidence booster in general, simply because they're starting to realize now how important soft skills are, especially when clubs like these exist. Before clubs, cyber clubs on campus exist, students don't necessarily anticipate or understand the concept of working in teams, or the concept of soft skills, or the concept of team leadership, things of that nature, and they learn it through these types of avenues. So if you could move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the example of the certifications that I received. I participated in fall 2023 and spring 2023. And here's our scorecard. Pretty neat, right? We placed 84th percentile, and we were, not as prepared. I mean, we tried our best, but I think we could even rank higher. That's the way that my university's campus club operates. So it's really cool to see the top categories, right? When you work as a team, enumeration and exploitation, we got 98th percentile out of the 450 schools in the US. That's not bad. And then cryptography is pretty high too, things of that nature. So again, the concept of all these things and why I mentioned this in terms of network security is really just providing students with a very comfortable way of easing into network security. Because even for myself, it's kind of funny that Terri mentioned risk, right? I actually would love to teach risk. I'd love to teach risk. And for me here, I'm learning a lot about like the different tools, like working with you all. I'm learning from Kevin and Terri, like, wow, VMware is a really great idea. I'm going to take that with me. And so when you combine those things together, you're just going to come up with a really great community on campus. And I keep emphasizing the word community because for a lot of us students, since I'm kind of closer on the student side than the professor side right now, I'm in this like weird, awkward, tween spot. But for us students, a lot of us, it's our first time in the family, maybe being a STEM major, or maybe it's our first time actually having a place to go to that isn't just the internet to talk about network security, right? So we want to make this environment as comfortable and as affordable as possible. So the good news about this NCL is that it, having a club on campus allows students to learn how to ask for funding. So the students of the club, even though I co-founded the club, I'm not the president. The presidents had to figure out the funding. And so it was a good learning lesson for them as well, to figure out funding. And so now we have funding for 2 teams consistently every semester, since we already showed, that we're winning and stuff like that. Next slide, please. So very briefly, there's several types of events in these kinds of capture the flags. We have the gymnasium. And I think, again, when we think about the concept of network security, gymnasium is a really great place to kind of have students jump around, right? Again, the concept of a comfortable environment. Sometimes students, I know myself, can be very hard on myself when I'm learning something new. So it's very easy to be in a gymnasium pre-competition, figure out okay, well, I don't know this answer. Let me go to George. He sees nationally ranked in individual competition. So these types of platforms are really, really great way to have students kind of ease their way into the concept of seeing themselves be good at these domains and figure out what it is that they like. I like to leave it very open-ended for students, because it takes them some time. When I first started off in comp sci in undergrad, I thought I would hate database design. I really was scared of database design. And then I took the class. I didn't get the best grade in the world. And then all of a sudden I was a huge fan of database design. It could be the same way for a student with network security through, not just the classroom setting, but through these types of settings as well. The next slide, please. So this is fun. I presented this with my friend George, who I mentioned is our CTF chair for Women in Cybersecurity at GW. We have an example here, a very easy example that we provided the students of, what is the first username password combination attempt made to log into the server. This is actually a real thing from the NCL competition. And so George explained to the girls and the allies about PCAP at that moment, like right on the spot as we were doing our club meeting, and made an immediate reference to Wireshark, what Kevin mentioned. And so this is a non-classroom setting where we're already kind of throwing these tidbits to students who may not have even taken a network security class. I think, yeah, there were a lot of students in attendance in our meeting yesterday that had never taken a network security class. Because the aim of campus clubs sometimes is to just provide exposure, right? Maybe they see a competition like that and they go, oh my gosh, I heard Professor Terry's super cool. I heard that she's got some Cisco stuff, or definitely like, oh my gosh, Professor Kevin, he has that VMware stuff. Like I heard about that, like in my friend's internship, like, whoa, these resources are so cool. They have these resources. I got to register for their class. I heard that, Professor Kevin knows Wireshark too. So all that kind of stuff together. I know it sounds like, it sounds like it's kind of, an interesting idea to have community that embedded, but I really do believe in it because it actually exists, on my campus, and I created the club. There's over 100 students now in less than 2 years. So it's possible, you know what I mean? Like it actually really is a thing that could happen. And so next slide, please. Okay, so again, these are the outcomes. I'm very happy to say that the Foggy Bottom Rats, we had reached a diamond rank for the second semester in NCL, and that's something that we're able to share with our department, the C's department at GW. And I think they're trying to get us in for an interview or something like that. And again, I mentioned we just had the National Cyber League GBM the other day. If you'd like, if you'd like to see what that looks like, we have a copy of the Zoom meeting to share with you all. And it's a good reference to see, like, okay, so this is how you get students engaged, meeting looks like. Oh, I want to read this. This sounds fun. Sorry, go back real quick. National Cyber League Fall 2023. WESIS GW, Team Foggy Bottom Rats came to play. We reached the highest tier and placed national leaderboard, chewing through the team competition over 450 schools and universities. This completes WESIS GW's first year in NCL, having maintained diamond rank tier for both spring 23 and fall 23. Truly is a trash can, not trash cannot experience. Thank you.
Thanks, Carmi.
Thanks.
Any thoughts? How many of you participate in NCL already or other competitions with your cyber club? Few of you, yep. Yeah, so I definitely would, good, Litany, that's awesome. Yeah, so one of my first day of school kind of chats when I'm teaching a new class, especially a newer or cyber type class. Oh, awesome. And is I go to the class and I say, how many of you want a job when you're done with this degree? Most of them raise their hand. Not all, I will tell you that, and then I tell them that the best way to get a job is to, do well in your classes academically, get that industry certification, especially if you're in our region. DoD requires that Security Plus, and then get that hands-on experience, that hands-on application like NCL, CCDC, some of the NCAE one that Carmi started talking about, the Vivid, Hack the Box. That is key. I literally had a student when I was at Pikes Peak Community College who started as a Cisco 1 student, had no experience in anything. He was a bartender. and he started taking Cisco 1. He got involved in the club right away, even though he knew nothing. By the next semester, he had led the cyber club to a very high spot on the NCL list, got a job offer to be help desk. The following semester, he actually was recruited by CDW and left school, unfortunately, but is working, making like super big bucks, and all because he started really with Cyber Club. So that's my little bandwagon chat there.
Oh,
And then,
I also want to,
yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to mention one more thing that I forgot to mention earlier, and that because of our ranking, it's garnered a lot of attention. George Mason University just started their Women in Cybersecurity Club. And even though George Mason is already quite highly ranked and comparable to our campus, they don't necessarily have that type of diversity of community that our campus has, with all years and all majors, girls and allies. And so we're thinking of creating a hybrid team, like a literal GMU GWU team, and that's going to be rocking. Like, I am so excited. I won't be able to do that team. I'll be participating in a cyber policy strategy competition with the Atlantic Council this next month, but I'm definitely going to help like the two teams like come together and, you know, super team. Wow, that's like Avengers. You know what I mean? If we can get the students from other colleges to even join as well, and again, it just creates this concept of like, wow, I can even get to know students from other colleges, and at the end of the day, similar to what Terri had mentioned, you know, I'm around certain students that have had certifications before me. Like, one of my friends during our NCL competition, he was studying for CISSP. He passed it like after the competition. And so just that exposure alone, you have friends getting certificates, you know, and you're just like, well, wow, I can do that too. I feel like a lot of the time, you know, we tend to not necessarily understand sometimes the anxiety, right? The pressures there can be breaking through into this field. And I feel like the spaces like this, it's so super important to have these competitions, to have something that can kind of redirect students, you know, in a certain path to really, like, you know, gain some social skills, you know, gain good team building skills, and you know, really have fun. Because at the end of the day, a lot of us entering cybersecurity as students, we want to have fun, and we want to do something meaningful at the same time for our society. So yeah, I want to thank you, Terri, for all your insight with that. And thank you, Anne, for also sharing you know, your involvement with the CTFs at your campus. I really look up to instructors because it's a lot of planning, to be honest. Like, as a student that has planned NCL 2 teams, like since we started, while we're starting the club, it's a lot of work. But when you get through it and you figure your routine, it becomes easier every semester. Yeah.
We, if I just mention that the competitions, there's a couple, because they're not mentioned here, is the, there is the NICE Challenge project. They just built out a whole competition, and I've been piloting that with the gentleman there. And so that is kind of a challenge type. It's not a CTF like the NCAE cyber games or the NCL. But then we also have a local, our ISACA Detroit chapter is very, very active. It's large and active. And so we have it's a case competition, because those soft skills are so important that they have to solve a technical case, and then they have to actually present it in front of experts that work in the Detroit area in very high level jobs. A lot of them are hiring managers. So they were already trying to recruit. And last year, we won, my students won first, second, and third. They placed. And the beauty of that competition is, because I came from industry, I know they've got the money, and I said, hey, pony up some prize money. Well, first prize is $4,000. Second prize is 2,500. Third is 1,500. You can do it by yourself or you can do it in a team. And the beauty of these guys is if they feel that there are like 2 teams that won, each team will get the full amount. They don't make them, because I told them, don't be making them split this now. If you could pony up, you know, they were so good. And so my students just loved it. You know, students need the money. And so so these 3 competitions are very different skills. I love the capture the flag because we're going to do the NCAA Cyber Games March 2nd. But the case competition where you actually have to put on a whole presentation and it's very much about you're like putting on, you're like a consultant. And so I guess, I'm sorry, I'm rambling. My point is that these competitions are absolutely invaluable for these students. They build those skill sets so that it's like real world experience because they're doing tech support throughout. It's under pressure. That is the best way to learn. And I say that from experience starting off on a help desk in the mid 1980s. Believe me, that is some serious, you know, that was pressure and it was good. It's good pressure, but you know, I think the competitions actually emulate that to an extent.
I totally agree. Thank you for that. And Paige is putting some links into the chat and including the CAE community ones. And I am totally on your bandwagon, Anne, like 100% competitions all the way. Awesome. Any other comments? All right, let's bring up Zoe. Zoe, do you want me to flip slides or do you want to do it?
I would love that if you were happy to do that. That would be
Sure.
great.
All right.
And what a great way to spend Friday lunchtime listening to these amazing presentations from you all. And I'm certainly zeroing in on what Anne was talking about, what you've talked about a lot, Terri, about Carmen was talking about that need. It's not just that our students need to know how to do something, they need to know how to do something within a workplace. And being a centre of academic excellence, which we all are here, means providing opportunities for our students to build that kind of competence. So what do I mean by competence? Competence and competency are widely used words, which are often applied to different things. So one of the decisions we made within the CAE community was to really focus on one shared definition, which is going to apply to the in-class activities and the internships and competitions. We wanted a common approach which could apply to each of these things in a consistent way. And when I think about competency, I'm thinking about that bridge between college and employment. I love the idea that when we talk to our students, most of them want to go into a workplace. I'd love to know what the other students want to do. But I think we need to provide a service to our students to prepare them for workplace in some way. And the extent to which we do that depends upon the kind of institution within which we're teaching. And Terri, you've touched on that as well. You know, we may within a community college be very focused upon the applicability of what we're teaching for workplace. And there may be 4-year programs where it's not such a big theme. But I think the commonality is that if we're within the CAE, we do need to do this to some extent. We do need to think about that bridge. So the definition that we've come up with is that competency is the ability for the student to complete a task in the context of a work role. It's not just knowing how, it's knowing how to within the workplace. Can we go on to the next slide, please? So we wanted to operationalize that definition. The definition, which has been approved by the CAE community, we've had an amazing working group. I know Anne is part of that. Gretchen's been part of that. Really great people. Paige is on board there as well with Michael. And having got the definition, we wanted it to be usable. We wanted it to be workable. And importantly to me, when I think about our student experience, we're not just thinking about what student is experiencing within the classroom. We're thinking about all the opportunities that we're giving to them. And competency, we wanted a way of talking about competency, which is going to fit if it's applied to a competition, if it's applied to different situations, taking place in a range, playing a part in the NICE challenge. So we identified 5 essential elements for when we're talking about competency. We're going to have an actor, we're going to have a person who is enacting this competency. That's going to be our student who we're going to describe in some way. And that student is enacting a task. And we don't want to reinvent the wheel. That's one of the reasons that we're gathering together for these training sessions. There's so much good practice. Nobody wants to be wasting time reinventing the wheel. So we decided that our behavior we're going to take from either the NICE framework or the DCWF framework. There are already ways of defining the tasks from cybersecurity workplace. We're just going to reference those. We're not going to recreate them. So we're going to think about our student who's going to have a go at enacting one of those tasks defined within one of these frameworks. And then we're going to describe the context. We're going to describe how they do that. That might be describing the classroom activity that we're building for them. It might be like Carmi was talking about, describing something they're doing in the competition. And Anne, I love your example of the ISACA competition, which is really workplace focused. So A, B, and C are describing what the student is going to do. But obviously, not all students are going to demonstrate competency, right? We can set up a competency experience for our students. It could be a learning experience. They're not all going to always be successful. So we want to think about, well, what would success look like? Is there a certain amount of time we would expect them to figure out this competency within? Or is there a level of accuracy that an employer would expect if they were doing this? And then importantly for me, we're also thinking about those employability skills, because as well as teaching our student knowledge and skills, we also need to be thinking about how our students are able to behave within the workplace. When I've done research with employers, they're talking a lot about these professional skills, this ability for our students to be able to communicate professionally, to operate within a team, to demonstrate good ethical judgments, which I know Terry is going to refer to as well, to take that critical approach, the creative problem solving. You know, when a student is faced with a networking challenge, they often need to think creatively. They're not just following a list of predefined instructions. So this is what we're meaning by employability. And for you as educators, when you're building a competency experience, we're not just evaluating a student's employability, saying this student's a great communicator or this student works brilliantly within a team. We're also helping our students to develop those skills in the kind of opportunities which we're giving to them. So can we go on to the next slide, please? I want to just give a quick example of what this might look like in relation to networking. So my colleague, Vincent Nessler, he's been chairing our working group on competency. This is his example. He took an activity he was doing within his classroom, which was looking at how students can diagnose network connectivity problems. And he used the ABCDE to just think about that bridge. What would this look like to an employer? So he has his students on a 200 level networking class, and he knows that before giving them this competency, they need to have completed the networking fundamentals. So he's got an idea of who this student is, and he's designed the opportunity around an awareness of who this student is and what knowledge and skills they already have in place. He's cut and pasted the task, the behavior from the DCWF framework, number 555, diagnose network connectivity problem. And Vinny also thinks it's important here to fix it. It's not enough to just diagnose it. If you're in the workplace, you're not meant to just walk around finding problems. You're meant to be a problem solver as well. For his context, he has them acting as a network operations specialist. He's helping them identify the kind of work role within which he would do this task. And that serves two different purposes. We're both preparing our students to go into the workplace, being competent within this work role, but we also want our students to know, is this kind of work role they want to do? Because what we don't want is our students graduating, taking a job which they hate for the next 50 years, right? We want them to have some ideas of, well, if I like this kind of thing, that means that I might enjoy going in the direction of being network operations specialist. And if this is the worst class I've ever done, probably a good idea that I don't apply for those kind of jobs. So in the context here, he has his students acting as networks operations specialist, and he gives them a network, which he's just brought in here as an additional piece of documentation. And it has connectivity issue due to either misconfigured IP, DNS, or GW. And they need to be able to diagnose that problem. And when he thought about it, he was thinking, well, if they're in the workplace, an employer would probably expect them to do this completely. It's either going to work or it's not going to work, right? So it needs to be fixed 100%. And he thought around 30 minutes was the right amount of time. And he knows that the employability skills that we have here are critical thinking and integrity. The integrity is that you're not just going to give it a quick fix where the problem comes up again next time you reboot the computer. It's that you've had the integrity to provide a proper solution to this. I think that's my last slide. If we go down again. Okay, so I wanted to give you some resources. The reason we're talking about competency within the CAE community is that it's going to be part of redesignation. We know from the designation process that our colleges do a great job around teaching knowledge and skills, and they're able to evidence that through the knowledge units, which they use as part of that designation process. But what the Programme Management Office hasn't had is that showcase of all the extra stuff we do as well, all the ways in which we build our students' employability, that we build their competency. So that means that PMO, with their thinking around redesignation, now want all the CAE institutions to identify examples of the ways in which they build their students' competency. And that's adhering to the definition I gave you earlier. And that's also going to be evidenced through writing about competency using those 5 essential elements of the actor, behavior, context, degree, and employability. And we recognize that's a little bit of a culture shift. Even if you're already totally preparing your students for workplace, you've maybe never used these essential elements before. So we want to give lots of resources for this. So we have an e-handbook available. That's a hyperlink to it. It's not a very catchy handle, but you'll be getting the slides, so you can just download it or visit it from there. And I've referenced here both the DCWF and the NICE frameworks for those tasks which already define the cybersecurity workplace. We also provide in-person trainings. I have a few spaces left if any of you are coming to Louisville in April for the symposium. There are a few spaces left on Thursday morning for a training. You can't do that if you're point of contact for your program, but it's going to be a really good training session. So if you're not a point of contact, you come into the symposium, we have a few seats left. Please do then email me. We also have some standalone training, got a training video which will be forthcoming, and then we'll have some additional training moving forwards. But if you have any questions about any of this, please feel free to email me. You've got my email just there. And really, this is about celebrating the things that we're already doing as educators and having a language to talk about that for all this experiential learning that we're providing to our students.
Okay, any questions or comments for Zoe? That was amazing. James has a comment. One of the things we do is work really closely with our IT department, send students to our IT director to be interviewed and fill help desk roles.
Fabulous.
That's amazing.
And I think this fits as well with what Carmi was talking about. That realization we can do this. The best way to take down the imposter syndrome is to get the experience of doing it and then suddenly to gain that confidence of, hey, I can do this. So what a great opportunity to give them, James.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yes, I do believe in the community aspect a lot. I think whether it's, like for example, I was my first job before my internship at the State Department and at Intel Corporation, my first job was a campus job. I love learning languages. I love diplomacy, cultural diplomacy, tech diplomacy, you name it. So I was actually a program assistant for the language center on campus as I was, applying for internships, as I was co-founding and developing women in cybersecurity at GW. So any kind of place where you can find a community, it kind of like builds you up to this like concept of a pathway. And a lot of students sometimes when they step into school, the first thing they think of is, I go to school, I will be attending a class, this class will complete a degree. As much of it as it is, since we all are very interested in teaching and learning, I hope that, my takeaway as new and early faculty is really just the development of lifelong learning. I want to make sure that, students understand, hey, things happen in life, but, developing a sense of self, navigating through experiences, whether it's, Women in Cybersecurity Conference, whether it's your local ISACA chapter meeting, which by the way, when I was an undergrad, before I chose to go into cybersecurity, I attended the ISACA meetings in my local chapter, Los Angeles, where I'm from. And when I attended the chapter, they're very welcoming to students. And I realized, wow, this is cool. I want to really like look into cybersecurity, because ISACA, they let the students sit in and listen in on some really great talks. So that kind of exposure, having different areas of exposure for students, different areas where experiential learning can occur, you're just going to see so many great things blossom from that. So yeah, next thing you know, they'll be ready for their internships, and they'll say, oh, thanks professor, and you'll say, no, it's all your hard efforts too. So yeah, thank you, Zoe.
Yeah, exactly. And just to kind of foot stomp what Carmi was saying, we encourage our students to get involved with our local chapter of ISSA, because there is a lot of basically free resources for them. They get to network with the community, and really great associations come out of that. So we just thought we would have a little bit of discussion time here, a little bit about assessment and evaluation. For instance, I know Kevin has some ways that he assesses the labs that he does, so I'll let him speak to that a little bit.
Sure. So when I do labs in my class, I want them to, make sure they understand what they're doing and they've gone through the process. And it's kind of one of the hard things about labs, is to kind of know if they've done it, if they understand it, and if they were able to get through it. So one of the things I do is I have them do like lab reports, where they first have to write kind of a recap of everything that I had them do. Not just a step-by-step thing, but more in like a paragraph form, so that they can talk about it and just give a review of it. But then also just take screenshots along the way of the different processes that they do with that too, so we can kind of see from start to finish what they were doing in there. Just because it's kind of a hard thing to grade sometimes, because it is just a live machine they're working on, and seeing the process can be difficult because you're not over the shoulder the whole time watching them. So that's one way that I kind of manage the labs and how to grade labs and look at those. Does anybody have any other ways that they have done labs before, or any other thoughts on that?
I know that was always has been one of my biggest challenges as a hands-on instructor, right? And especially as we pivoted during the pandemic and really embraced the online learning model. So many labs that I have used in my classroom are literally, click here. So the student clicks there. And then the lab says type blah, 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 blah. And so they type blah, 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 blah. And so then, and it's my opinion, nobody has to agree with me, but I feel like they're not really learning anything other than how to follow directions, because then when they mistype something, they don't know enough to troubleshoot what is happening. And so that is something I've been struggling with. And so I like Kevin's approach of kind of writing that paragraph and trying to think a little bit more critically about the steps that they've been performing. But would love to hear from any of you, and Carmi too, if you want to talk from the grad student perspective. What works? How do we assess and evaluate learning?
I'll wait for somebody to chime in.
I have a comment. Because you're absolutely right. There are cases where students really struggle with troubleshooting because they're so new. But what I do is I love labs. I love the hands-on labs, even though some can be a little prescriptive. I start off the really, really new people on the type this, type that, but I make them do screenshots, just like what you were saying, Kevin. But I also make them write a narrative underneath the screenshot, and I have them do a reflection at the end. So I ask them some probing questions because I want their feedback on the lab, what they thought, all this, so the reflection's very informative. But if you use, depending on the labs, those are the Cisco labs, those are very much, press here, press here, press there. So in my incident response and disaster recovery class this semester, I ran across the Blue Team online labs.
Yes.
No directions whatsoever. Everyone was freaking out. But I do have a cyber lab tech student that I hire, and that he kind of works with the students. But that was the reflections were very informative in that case, because they were saying, you know what, I didn't realize what I didn't know.
Exactly.
That's exactly what I wanted. And if you don't have any of that step by step, and you now suddenly are faced with having to troubleshoot it yourself. Now, I don't leave them without a safety net. That's our cyber lab tech. There's always tech support available, but I really made them suffer through. I kind of mix those labs so that they're not totally lost and screaming and running away.
Exactly.
Yeah, that kind of reminded me of some things that I've done in classes in the past as well too. And the AWS Academy does this well with some of their courses too, is they'll have their guided step-by-step labs, but then every once in a while throw in like what you might call a challenge lab, where you just give them the outcome that you want. And same type of deal, no instructions, where then they have to go and kind of recap what they did in the last 2 or 3 labs to get there. Is nice to throw in as well too.
Mm-hmm. That's great. All right. Oh yeah, challenge labs. And if I remember correctly, the nice challenge labs are just, they just give you the problem and you have to figure it out, right?
Yeah. They're similar to the Blue Team labs challenges, where you have to solve some, so you have to do a lot of research, which I think is outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
Those are really, really good labs. Both sites.
Oh, James.
I like that.
Writing tickets. That's amazing, because that is something they absolutely have to do in real life. Oh, that's wonderful.
Do you have when you do that, do you just have them like turn in an assignment with that, or do you have any kind of like ticket infrastructure that they might run into, like a simulated ticket writing help desk type thing?
Yeah, feel free to come off mute if you can too. Oh yeah, true. Well, that is fabulous. Thank you for sharing all of those ideas. We have just a few minutes left. So we were going to take a little nod to ethics and thinking about that as well. And so one of the things that I wanted to wrap up with was, how do you incorporate ethics into your networking classroom? When you think about our network administrators, they really have that core access to everything that travels across the network. So, you know, I feel like I'm always harping on it. And in my cyber specific classes, you know, like ethical hacking, for example, they have to literally sign a paper that says they will only use their skills for good. But just wanted to get some ideas from you and best practices on how you incorporate those ethics into the classroom.
I just threaten them.
Yeah, for sure.
I just say to them, do not make me bail you out of jail. I will call your parents. But
Yeah.
yes, I spent a lot of time on, you know, don't be using your Wireshark at Starbucks or think you're just gonna, you know, decide to. So yeah, I really spent a lot of time on that so they understand the legal significance.
Mm,
And if they want a job in cyber, I tell them, if you're going to be even downloading illegal movies, the FBI won't even, you've already disqualified yourself for a job with the FBI. So it's like, you don't realize that, you know, why go to college if you're going to completely destroy your career before you even graduate? So I kind of couch it in those terms, because it's like, you have to pass a background check. I have had so many background checks, you know, in my career. You have to, if you can't pass a background check, you have just eliminated yourself from a career. So why would you want to do that?
exactly.
It's
Michael?
worked so
Oh,
far, thankfully. So
yeah.
I did kind of the same thing. I came up with a contract that I use in every single one of my courses. So I chose to, implement the ethical content in all my courses. So at the beginning of the class, I'd have a contract. I try to make it a little humorous to, and then go over it, and hopefully something would sink in and it'd work or not. I don't know.
Nice. Is that something you're willing to share with this group?
Oh, sure, if I can find it.
All right, that would be awesome. Yeah, so Paige brings up security clearance investigations, and I actually had a meeting yesterday with an investigator about a student, that I'd had, and they were very interested to know if they ever cheated. I mean, it's definitely, a thing to think about and to tell your students. Awesome. So we have about 5 minutes left. If you have any other questions or things you want to talk about, please feel free to chime on in. Here are, yes, especially for the top secret. Yep. Here are our emails if you want to get a hold of us for anything that we talked about or you have any further questions. Feel free. And thank you all. You were an amazing participatory group. It makes it so much more fun when we can all chat and share ideas. So thank you.
Well, and thank you, Carmi and Terry and Kevin and Zoe. You guys were amazing. That was a great conversation. Thank you so much for being our inaugural launch of this with that networking discussion, although we wandered all over the place, right? That's so amazing.
Yes. Yeah, they set the bar very high.
Yes, they did. But we are just so thankful to have people in the community like all of you that are participating in this and learning and teaching and sharing, those best practices, because these are tough things, right? And we got to keep conversations and connections going. So thank you guys for being our inaugural launch for that. Just so you know, our next event is 8 March. We will be doing that, and it is going to be sorry, I had it up here and then my calendar went away. It is going to, yep, it's going to be at 2:00 in the afternoon, East Coast time, right, Paige?
Yep.
And so we would love to have you come join us for that. And if you have any thoughts or feedback, Paige is probably going to be sending you a survey as we want to track all of your feedback because we want to make these better and more valuable for everyone. Our next topic on the 8th is going to be Linux, and it's going to be Litany from Mississippi State and Pam Schmeltz from Ivy Tech and Renee Tejon, who works at a whole lot of different universities.
Yep.
So we're very excited to have that for you in a couple of weeks. And just know, Paige is so wonderful. She set this up so that once you register once, you will just automatically get pinged for it each time it comes up. And do give us feedback on the timing, because we do want to, for the fall, narrow this in. If moving it around works, we can continue to do that as well. But we wanted to kind of experiment with that and get your specific feedback. So thanks to Paige for all the work she did getting this all put together. And Paige, I'm going to turn it over to you before we close out for today.
Cool. Just really quickly, if you're going to pass this along to anyone, just make sure that they're registering with their .edu email address and they're going to be good to go. So if they were interested in coming to the Linux one that's coming up, we also have one on pen testing, digital forensics, and then intro to cyber to round us out for this semester. So if any of those topics might be of interest to you or your colleagues at your school or other schools, please feel free to pass along that registration link. And I will send confirmation emails the day before and probably like 15 minutes before every meeting, since the times are going to change a little bit. So that way everybody can get the updated links. Now, after this ends, like I end the Zoom, you should have a survey pop up in your browser where you joined it from. If you could just fill it out, it's 5 questions. It helps us, it helps the speakers, and that will be there. And yes, they do have to be within a CAE institution to participate, from Litany in the chat. Cool.
Great. Thanks, Paige.
you,
I hope you all have a wonderful President's Weekend, and we will see you on the 8th.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Cool. Did you stop recording, Paige?
I am trying to find that. It